And that's all, folks. Well, for now anyway. But I told you guys, more questions. For the most part, more questions. And I'm pretty sure some of you guys are probably a little pissed off because, like I told you guys in my reaction video, nothing is really concrete just yet, to me anyway. I mean, aliens are still possible. There are still some things that point to Norse mythology, which I'll get into later in this episode, and Celtic mythology as well, and as we already know, Christianity. I mean, if you ask me, the show has always been comprised of many cultures and mythologies. I personally don't think it ever 100% pointed to just one thing, which is why I've been pretty quiet when it comes to those things. But, we'll get into all of that throughout this recap. And real quick, I just gotta say that y'all been really pissing off my haters with all this love y'all been showing me lately. Like, I really appreciate that. I just feel like I've just been showered with love and support. So I gotta thank you guys for that. It really means a lot. Now, let's go ahead and talk about episode 10, the finale. Oh, the places we'll go. And real quick, fun fact, that title actually references the Dr. Seuss book of the same name. And there are also a lot of similar themes throughout the book that correlate with this episode. So there you go, if anyone didn't know that. But anyway, the episode starts off with some foreshadowing from little Ethan as he plays with his finger puppets and he talks about how they need to get to the tower. Julie wakes up and tells Ethan that she'll tell him a story. But Ethan is like, I don't need you anymore. I can tell my own damn stories. So she asked him what was his story about, and he tells her that they are trying to find their way home. Two characters who are trying to get to a tower so they can find their way back home. Sounds a lot like Boyd and Sarah. During this time, Jade is aggressively banging on the door downstairs, and he rushes inside to tell Jim and the Matthews that he found the power solution. During this scene, I was thinking that Jade had finally found a little common courtesy, although he was still aggressively knocking on the door. But after he walks in and Jim locks the door behind him, I was like, oh, he didn't barge in because he couldn't this time, because Jim started locking the damn door. Which technically, if you think about it, he should have always been locking the door just as general precaution. But I just thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, after Jade walks in, he explains to the Matthews that there is still electricity coming out of the socket in the lamps. He demonstrates this by sticking the wires of a hairdryer down into the lamp socket, and surprisingly enough, the hairdryer works. And he basically tells them that with enough lamps and wires, they'll have enough power for the radio. Back in the woods with Boyd and Sarah, they discuss how they aren't sure about who or what dragged the tent. That's right, guys. I know some people wanted to believe that the tent was picked up by an alien beam, but Sarah confirms in this scene that the tent was indeed dragged by something or someone. So I don't know, maybe the damn UFO broke down and the aliens had to get out and drag that bitch. That way, anyone who wants to believe aliens can still hold on to that theory. But I'm just joking. I really don't know. It could be aliens. I really don't care either way. I just want it to be interesting. Then Sarah asks Boyd, where do you think we are? And he tells her that it's time to find out as he prepares to leave the tent. Then outside the tent, Boyd and Sarah are shocked as shit to see that they are surrounded by giant spider webs. I think it's safe to say that they were dragged by a large spider. Also in episode 9, it looks like a large spider leg was outside the tent as well. Not really quite sure about that, but that's what it looked like. But we'll get more into the spider stuff here in a little while. Back in town at the diner, Jade is doing another demonstration for the whole town this time, and they are basically rounding up everyone to scavenge all the wires and gather lamps for the radio. Meanwhile, over at the police station, Donna shares her doubts with Kenny regarding the radio tower, and she asked him if he thinks a radio signal is really going to make a difference, and he tells her that he hopes that it does, since radio waves can travel in ways that they can't. Afterwards, Kenny catches up with Christy over at Troy's ambulance, whoever the hell that is, the random guy that's been living in the ambulance all this time. I mean, his name has been on the side of the ambulance since the season started, but I'm pretty sure we've never seen this guy before. But I'm also sure that you guys will correct me down below in the comments if I am wrong. But during this time, Kenny shares a list with Christy of all the places he would like to visit if they ever get to go home. Then he decides to step up his game with Christy by telling her that maybe if the radio works, the two of them could travel somewhere from his list together. But unfortunately, she responds once again with that I'm engaged shit when she knows damn well she's into him. But I do get Christy's perspective as well in this moment because she believes that her special someone is still waiting for her, so it's tough. Over at the gas station, Tabitha goes to see Tom to find some digging tools, and she ends up finding herself a pickaxe. She also asks Tom why wasn't he helping with the tower, and he basically tells her that he's seen a lot of clever people fail trying to find ways out of the town. So yeah, it's safe to say that Tom has had enough of that shit, and he's like, hey, if y'all find a way out, just come find me. Meanwhile, at Colony House, Ellis drags Fatima outside to pop the question. He decides to ask her by the greenhouse because it's where he was standing when he first saw Fatima arrive in the town. And of course she says yes. I mean, was anyone really expecting her to say no? I mean, they're pretty much in love, it's very clear, so I'm not really surprised. Then we cut to the woods with Boyd and Sarah, as Sarah continues to complain to Boyd about how continuing in that direction probably isn't a good idea. But Boyd tells her that it was possibly a floodlight or a searchlight, and since he also doesn't know the way back to town, continuing in that direction was the best route since it could lead to something or someone that could help them. Then Sarah asked, what if whoever it is doesn't want to help? And Boyd is like, well shit, then we got ourselves a different kind of problem. Sarah also begins to ask more questions about the woman's voice she heard and who is Mr. Fishinlobes, and Boyd tells her that it was his nickname in the military. He also tells her that Ellis and his wife were the only ones that could have known that. Then Sarah goes on to suggest that maybe the voice she heard was his wife, but Boyd seems to be quite dismissive of this possibility. Which, this is just my take, so don't try to kill me down in the comments, but I felt like it was a little weird because Boyd asked for a sign from Abby earlier in the season. When he got that sign, he was like, cool, I need to go ahead and head out into the woods. So now I guess this is a little too far to think that maybe she's communicating with him through Sarah. Like, I guess this is where he draws the line. But at the same time, I was just like, you know, you took a sign from her and you headed out into the woods. Now, is it really that weird to assume that maybe Sarah can hear her voice? I don't know. I just thought that was a little bit strange, but at the same time, like I said, that's just my thoughts on it. But during their conversation, shit begins to get really weird when Boyd hears Abby yelling for help. He runs off and approaches this giant spider web where he sees Abby crying for help inside. As he gets closer, she grabs a hold of his ass and tries to snatch him inside, but luckily he pulls away. But now he's covered in spiders, desperately trying to fight them off, and as Sarah helps him get the spiders off, it looks like he gets bitten quite a couple of times, or actually quite a few times in the process from what we can see. Now, what's important to take note of from this scene is that Sarah doesn't hear or see what Boyd witnesses. Even after Boyd looks back at the nest and Sarah asked him what did he see, he says nothing, realizing that he's seeing things that aren't really there. Now, I haven't been mentioning Norse mythology or aliens in my recaps because I don't want to tie the show to just one form of lore, because it's obvious that Christianity and biblical references have been playing a role throughout the series as well. And I personally believe that the show is comprised of all of these things, to the point where the writers have hopefully concocted some new type of lore altogether, which I personally think is the coolest outcome, honestly. But anyway, I'm saying all of that to say that in this moment, this seems like a trick. The Norse god Loki is known to be a trickster, and he is also associated with knots and tangles. From my research, there are no mentions of spiders or insects in Norse mythology, but apparently Loki is also associated with spiders to some degree. And because he's known as a weaver of schemes, that kind of fits. But it also seems like a stretch to me at the same time. But there's another trick by the boy in white again later, or what I believe was a trick, but we'll discuss that a little bit more when I get to it. But we jump back to Colony House where we see Jim is preparing to raise the radio tower to the roof. And in this scene, Ethan tells Jim that Victor is probably somewhere doing his part of the quest as well, which he believes is very important. Then we cut back to the woods where we see Boyd is beginning to feel the effects of the spider bites. During this time, Sarah is pleading with Boyd to tell her what he witnessed near the spider's nest. But Boyd starts to get frustrated and he goes into a rant about how this place makes you think that you're doing the right thing and it gives you hope, and then it takes it away like it's feeding on your pain. In this moment, Sarah is like, we need to get to the light, and Boyd is like, to hell with that light. That's not exactly what he says, but I'm trying to do just a little bit better, y'all. And he's kind of just really ready to give up. And I think this is the first time we've ever seen Boyd break and be so vulnerable, which is also completely understandable, by the way. I mean, he's dealing with a very difficult situation, but I just wanted to acknowledge the character development here. Also, I have to say that Harold Perrineau's emotional range displayed throughout this series is just phenomenal. When he's sharing scenes with these other actors, you can just really see how many light years ahead he is compared to his co-stars. I mean, the difference in skill level is just very noticeable, and I can't praise his performance enough. That's not to say everyone else is terrible. I'm just saying he's been acting for quite some time, and his veteran status really shows. But Sarah is eventually able to put things into perspective for Boyd, and she reminds him that if he gives up now, that he will never see his son Ellis again, and this motivates Boyd to keep moving. And also during this time, we can see that a storm is on the way. Now, in Norse mythology, thunderstorms were believed to be caused by the god Thor riding into battle. Vikings also believed that thunderstorms would occur when Thor was angry. So like I said, I'm not opposed to pointing out the similarities related to Norse, even if they are loosely connected sometimes when it comes to this series. But I also think that it's possible that some kind of mythical god trapped them all here. But now that they are getting close to possibly finding a way to escape, the thunderstorms represent the god's anger with them. Now, why would a god want to trap them all here? I have no clue, but that's just a theory that I wanted to throw out there. Or shit, it could be aliens. Or Victor's mind created all of this, or any of the other several wild theories that people have been coming up with lately. Then we jump back to Colony House where we see the residents finally raising the tower, and Jade runs off and tells Jim that he's going to get his rolling papers because apparently it's never a bad time to burn one. Once Jade gets to Kenny's house, he walks inside to see Mrs. Lou praying at an altar for her husband. Jade tells her the good news about them possibly being able to go home, but Mrs. Lou doesn't really seem to care, understandably. And then Jade reveals some info regarding his backstory. He tells her how he grew up in France with his grandmother and how after she died he had to move back to the States to live with his uncle. He tells her that although his grandma was dead, he felt like he was leaving her behind in France alone. He says that he told a lady at the airport about his grandmother and she told him that they come with you when you go. And then he tells Mrs. Lou to not feel sad because her husband will come with her when she leaves. And then she invites Jade to come pray with her. And in this moment, Jade has been delivered. But nah, for real though, it's actually pretty dope to see what the writers are doing with Jade's character. I mean, he's a lot less of an asshole now. And we see him putting his guard down to bond with others. I mean, he's slowly becoming one of my favorite characters, and he's definitely the funniest, especially in this finale. Back at Colony House, they are preparing to position the tower on the roof, and we see Jade returning with snacks. And it was actually pretty funny when he walked inside and he was like, all right, ding dongs, if anybody fucks this up, you're spending a night in a box. And there was one guy in the back who was definitely like, oh shit, like how do you screw in light bulbs again? Then he asked Donna to pass out the snacks and she just stares at him. I mean, Jade is just comedic gold throughout this whole episode. During this time in the kitchen, Christy pays Kenny a visit, and it looks like she's just returning his lamp at first, but then she tells Kenny, you know, I loves yous and I want yous. Well, not exactly, but she's like, part of me wants to go home and get married to my fiance and just sort of pick up where we left off. And then the other side wants to travel to Iceland with your crazy ass. And I'm pretty sure we all know by now that Christy has basically made up her mind because she scoots just a little closer to Kenny after that and starts stroking his fingers. I mean, just playing with the man's mind. Good for you, Kenny. Back outside, we see that Tabitha has perfect timing as she runs up just as the radio tower is ready, and we get the good news that the radio has a signal and everyone is now very excited. Then Tabitha runs back off and tells Jim that she's going back to work on Plan B, which is digging the hole. Also, during this time, the Colony House folks also spot that the storm is on its way. Then we cut back to Boyd and Sarah in the woods as they hear the foghorn again. As they make their way over a hill, they are finally able to see the lighthouse off in the distance. And the lighthouse looks so ominous, but at the same time, it feels like a symbol of hope to a certain extent. I mean, the symbolism of a lighthouse is used to provide illumination and guidance when little else seems to light the way, and it may also offer protection, but it's usually never associated with anything bad from the research I've done, so this has to be a good thing for them. Also, not to mention that all of the signs we've seen throughout the show that points to the lighthouse as being, you know, some kind of good thing, like Ethan's stories or Tabitha's vision, which I personally think is a premonition, but hopefully we'll find that out in season 2. Back at Colony House, as the storm gets worse, Jim doesn't seem to be having much luck with the radio at first. Then at the last minute, he finally gets a response and hears a guy on the other end say hello. Of course, Jim is excited, and in this moment he's like, oh thank God. But the guy on the other end is like, whoa bitch, slow down. Jim, is that you? And I was just staring at the TV in this moment like, this is not going to go well. But Jim and Donna are both shocked as hell in this moment because the guy knows his name. And Jim is like, who is this? And the mysterious man responds with, your wife shouldn't be digging that hole, Jim. And then Jim takes off to go save Tabitha. Then we jump to Tabitha in the hole as the ground suddenly starts to crack and burst open. She falls through the hole and finally gets to see where the wires lead. And basically they just dangle underneath the house into the monster tunnels and they aren't connected to anything. Then we see a flashlight behind Tabitha in the dark, and the person steps forward into the light and we see that it's Creepy Victor. And I'm just joking, I will not be calling him Creepy Victor anymore. That's just a throwback to anybody that's been watching my videos since the beginning of the season. That's when we weren't really sure who Victor was, which we still don't really know who the hell Victor is, but I'm just saying. But Victor tells Tabitha that the boy in white told him that she would come and that he should wait. Victor also tells Tabitha that they have to go because there's not much time, and that's where the monsters sleep. And he also shows her the images that the monsters drew on the walls. Then Jim finally makes it to the house, but obviously it's too late and Victor has already stolen his woman. Back in the woods with Boyd and Sarah, Boyd is exhausted and he is ready to give up. But before they run out of time, the boy in white appears and he tells Sarah that Nathan was right and that this place is angry now. The boy in white tells her that she needs to get inside the faraway tree and that she'll be safe there. Then Sarah gives Boyd the talisman and sends him inside the tree first. And just like Victor said to Julie in episode 7, she tells Boyd that she'll be right behind him. After Boyd enters, he seems to be trapped in something that looks almost like a chimney, except there's no fireplace and it doesn't really look like there's a way out. And this shit worries me greatly. Then the episode ends with a shot of the camera panning through the diner while that creepy jukebox plays Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere by Neil Young and Crazy Horse. During this time outside, we can see that a coach bus has just arrived, and that is how the finale ends. Alright, so we have a few things to talk about, along with some season 2 predictions. I really don't have any strong predictions because I don't think anything I have is personally substantial at this time. But of course I want to chop it up and, throw the things out of my brain at you guys and let you guys kind of let me know what you think and throw your theories back at me. So let's talk about the voice on the radio first. So Jim definitely got a signal for sure, but it seems to me like something interfered with him trying to reach someone in the outside world. Like I truly felt like it was possible for them to find help in that way, but I felt like whatever is in control of this place is what stepped in to stop that. I'm really not sure if I thought the man's voice was actually human or not, and the possibility of this being some big, government experiment, but I honestly don't want another Wayward Pines from this show, so I hope that that is not the case. But comment down below and let me know what you guys think about the voice that Jim heard on the radio. I mean, do you guys think it was a human? Do you think it was some sort of entity like a god? Or maybe you think it was one of the creatures? I mean, we know that they sound like humans. I mean, and maybe their powers extend farther than what we've seen so far, and they can interfere with radio waves. I mean, let me know. And then there's the situation with the spiders, the illusions, and the boy in white. And the fact that, we don't know where the hell Boyd is now. I do feel like we are eventually going to see a giant spider at some point. I mean, I still feel like that's going to happen. And I think the illusions that Boyd was seeing are the effects of being farther away from the town. Those things didn't really seem to happen when they were closer to the town, as far as the illusions. And we also know that the illusions happened before he was bitten by the spiders. So we know that it wasn't the effects of the spiders because we saw Abby before he was bitten. Then there's the boy in white, who I feel like could be a representation of the Norse god Loki. I mean, he seems to be doing good things, but I'm not sure if the situation that happened with Boyd at the end of the finale was a trick by him or not. Like, I feel like the boy in white knew where that tree led to. But then there's the situation that happened earlier in the episode where Victor said that the boy in white told him to wait to save Tabitha. So I'm not really sure about that one. It just seems like it was a trickster move to me. Also, I'm pretty sure that Boyd and Sarah only had one talisman and she gave that to him. So if they don't end up in the same place, will Sarah still be safe? I mean, I don't really see how she's going to fit in that area where Boyd is, but how is she going to be safe? But at the same time, the talisman might be useless where they are now against whatever new creatures they may encounter. So she may not even need one. I don't know. I definitely trust Sarah now though, since I'm pretty sure she gave Boyd the talisman, unless that was something else that she handed him before he went inside the tree. But it definitely looked like a stone to me. And that's pretty important where they are, so Then there's the situation with Victor and Tabitha, and how the wires just dangle into the tunnels that the creatures use to travel and sleep beneath the town during the day. In the drawings I showed you guys in my community tab, each tunnel goes underneath each house. So were the creatures trying to burrow into their homes maybe? Or, you know, dig underneath the house until it collapses and falls into the hole? I mean, I don't know. And then the drawings on the walls are basically the same things that we've been seeing throughout the show, along with some new art as well. And I don't really have an answer about what that large red figure is that looks like it has tentacles. Shout out to OXM on Reddit though for trying to help me hunt down the mythology references. We think that the tentacle monster could be related to some sort of H.P. Lovecraft work, but of course we aren't really sure. We just know that as far as we know, there's nothing that looks like that in Norse mythology. And I honestly don't have any strong predictions about season 2. And this actually might have to be a separate video, but for now I think that the people who have just arrived on the bus are going to play a huge role in things progressing. There may even be some more interesting connections between the people who are already there and the people who just arrived. Also, I think in season 2 we'll get the backstory behind the boy in white. Maybe how he got there, or how he's able to communicate with certain people like Victor, Ethan, and now Sarah. So yeah, we really got a long way to go, guys, but you guys can definitely expect updates from me on any new information regarding the show in the future, especially once we find out whether or not if there's going to be a season 2, which I'm pretty sure we're going to get a season 2. But once it gets confirmed, I'll make a video chatting and stuff about that, so we'll have something to talk about. Also, I gotta say thank you to my patrons who have been continuing to support my content, and the fact that you guys have also been watching this show lately as well. That's been fucking awesome, and I really appreciate all the love. Honestly, it means a lot. So there you have it, and if you enjoyed the content, you guys know exactly what to do. Thank you for watching.